Hi, Rick, and welcome to this episode of the Curiosity Key podcast. I'm absolutely thrilled for you to join me because I'm really looking forward to learning a lot more about what it is that you're doing and being able to share the amazing work that you're working on, pretty much. So,
Thanks,
welcome to the podcast. Do you want to, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you've ended up doing what you're doing?
Thank you. Really pleased to be here. Thank you. So I am the CEO of a company called NuroKor, which is a UK biomedical startup. We operate in the area of bioelectronic medicine, which for most people don't know what that is. But bioelectrical medicine or bioelectrical therapy has been used since the ancient Romans, Egyptians, when they were using electric fish for treating pain. For everything from pain relief to headaches, we through the ages we've used it for many things, even psychological impacts. If you might recall, some of the electrotherapy that happened in the 19th century. It is an area of fascinating interest because our bodies we are completely electrical. As a matter of fact, if anything happens to you, the first thing that medical professionals will monitor is your electricals, your vitals. So having a impact or being able to use bioelectrical medicine for things like pain relief, or things like muscle spasm, for treating inflammation, just a range of physiological issues, as well as the area of neuroscience, which is, again, I keep using the word fascinating and incredible because that for me encompasses the industry at large, as well as its ability to help so many, on a large scale. It's accessible for most.
And what was it that got you into this field of biomedical science?
So it's probably a little bit of an uninteresting story. It's somewhat by accident. I had actually suffered from back pain. I recall as early as the age of sort of 10, where I had my first back pain incident and went to the doctors with that. So I suffered through that. Teens weren't so bad, but then into my 20s and 30s, it really started to strike me hard and was impacting my life dramatically, to the point where, when I started to have children, having to think about things like putting your shoes on or picking up your child because of back pain, or sometimes being laid out for 3 to 4 days at a time, unable to move. It was completely debilitating. I used to take a cocktail of painkillers, as many people do when they're in pain, because you do become somewhat desperate. Through a career of around 15 years of real estate, at the end of that career, I was looking for a new opportunity. I happened to stumble across generic type bioelectrical devices similar to TENS machine. I started to look into the science. I started to play with it. It helped my back. It helped other family members with their problems. I started to look into the science and understood that there actually was no science for the most part. So all of these devices, or this technology, was so capable of doing things, but it was not it wasn't applied in a scientific or medical way. And the lack of knowledge from medical professionals to even those who were purported professionals in the area, I just saw that there was a huge opportunity to do good with something that had the ability to impact many.
I think, my experience of back pain wasn't long-term in any shape or form. I was hit by a car many years ago.
Wow, yeah.
But that stopped me rowing. It stopped me doing the things that I love doing, and made me pretty much like ruined my life because I didn't really know what I was doing. And it was only until that point that I was like, right, okay, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel with the physio that I was doing and, starting to move and do other things. But for a lot of people, it's so debilitating, and it does, ruin lives.
It does. It has pain it's a global epidemic that has such an impact on quality of life. And it's something that we don't really talk about a lot. Often people that are in pain, they're not outwardly saying I'm in pain. They're simply not themselves, or they start to become depressed because they're in this constant feeling of anxiety around not being physically capable or having that intensity of pain. It's really hard to explain because we don't have a good memory for pain. So you recall, the position that you were in and how it impacted you, but trying to remember the actual pain, we don't have a very good memory for it.
Yeah, you remember the psychological impacts rather than the actual physical pain.
Yeah. And, it affects so many from young. I mean, my daughter, who's now 10, but she started with growing pains from the age of about 6. And that was sort of early days for me. But she still used to use the device, my early devices, for growing pains. So, instead of popping pills or taking paracetamol, ibuprofen, she would use the device, fall asleep, and I just simply take the pads off her, and that was that. It obviously changed my life. I wouldn't say that I'm cured, but certainly my issues are resolved. I haven't had a serious back incident for a long time. I can't remember actually. So it's had a positive impact for me, as well as the thousands I've personally experienced, as well as plenty of close friends and family.
So the devices that you're producing, do they solve the pain, or do they look into sort of solving the actual problem that's causing that pain?
Good question. Depending on the individual, different technologies have the ability to have different outcomes. So we use 3 bioelectrical technologies, or 3 main ones. The main ones are peripheral nerve stimulation. So peripheral nerve stimulation, at its most basic level, has the ability to interrupt the pain pathway, to close the pain gateway to the brain. So like a painkiller. Now, there's many other health and physiological benefits, but that's the main one. Then we've got neuromuscular. Neuromuscular has the ability to relieve muscle pain at lower frequencies. So it's like having a physical massage of the tissue, and it can help for many things, including inflammation, as well as reducing sarcopenia, which is the muscle wastage, particularly in the aging, for diseases like diabetes, where people have diabetic neuropathy, they're in pain, they've got lower limb circulation issues. We can physically help with that stimulation of circulation. So that's some of those. Then we use a third technology, which is called microcurrent, which works at a millionth of an ampere, which is at cellular current level. It has a myriad of benefits, from mitochondrial cell health through to pain reduction, through to inflammation reduction, through to wound healing. So the active repair of tissue. I'll use that word again, fascinating and incredible.
I think I love it when people overuse words, things like that, because it just means that you're passionate. Again, another overused word, about what it is that you're doing. So yeah, go for it. More than happy. I use the word amazing all the time, because I'm like, oh, it's so interesting, it's amazing, and people are like, oh really, is it interesting? I was like, yes, it is. But you I think in one of your videos that I was looking at, you talk about that not everything is the same, and that was something that really resonated with me, because I talk to a lot of my clients, I talk to a lot of people that everybody generalizes so much and puts a lot of things into one small box. And your video, I thought, was very powerful, because it was talking about that not everything is the same. So and you talked about that just then. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So aside from each individual type of therapy or technology having a different outcome, or sometimes they have overlapping outcomes, but they affect things differently. Also, the individual frequencies. So what we do is we formulate these technologies. As an example, a certain frequency with a certain pulse width, without getting too technical, will elicit a certain outcome for one person, and it may or may not work for the next person, because their body needs a different frequency or a different pulse width. Or it could be the same issue. The same person could need something later on the day or in a few minutes' time, depending on what their body needs. So whenever studies are done, they're quite often done around singular frequencies, and thus there's this wide and varying scale of efficacy, whether it worked or it didn't. Because simply they just tried one frequency for one application at a particular period of time. So we look at the studies and look at what frequencies, for instance, are successful for a particular thing, such as back pain, and then we use known combinations or successful combinations of particular frequencies that we know may be effective. Now, that's in very simple terms, but we formulate these frequencies into treatments. So if somebody says, well, I've tried bioelectrical therapy and it didn't work, or I've tried TENS, or whatever it might be that they think that they've tried, it's a bit like saying, an antibiotic, and saying, well, have you tried a pill? Well, that's a good question. But what was in the pill? Similarly, with bioelectrical medicine, it's what was in the formulation that you tried, and what did you try it for? What was the application used? So bioelectrical therapy tends to get grouped into one thing, often called TENS, which is even the medical industry misuses this term. TENS just simply stands for transcutaneous, so through the skin electrical nerve stimulation. It could be implantable, it could be spinal cord stimulation. Drugs are either oral, injectable, transdermal, but we don't just call them drugs. We don't call them transdermals. We call them by what they actually are. And bioelectrical medicine is no different, but it is misunderstood in that regard. People think, well, yeah, I've tried one of those for £20 that I bought from eBay or something, and it didn't work. Well, yeah, possibly it didn't, because you don't know actually what it was. It's a bit like buying pills on eBay and saying, well, it didn't work for what I was trying it for, but you don't know what it was.
I think it's a huge challenge in every single industry that, people have a bad experience with one thing and then they think that everything else is going to be the same, or people try to generalize too much to attract a broader market, but then actually just ends up blending into the background and not standing out for the things that they're absolutely amazing at.
Yeah, this is true, and it's a big challenge for us.
I used to sell laser scanning technology, and it was the same there. Like, everybody sold laser scanning technology, and it's like, okay, cool. Well, you wouldn't class a unit that had a 4,000 meter range in the same way that you would class a unit that had a 40 meter range. They're both completely different, but the technology is the same, but they're both very different, and the application's different. But it always amazed me, especially when you go to events and everybody's talking about what they do and the products in the exact same way, and it's like, no, here's your opportunity to stand out. And that's definitely what I've really enjoyed about looking at what you're doing, that you're very specific. And I think, that it's definitely going to contribute to your success with this.
Thank you.
But I could talk to you about the technology for ages, because that's something that I'm really interested in. However, I'm quite interested for you to tell your story about how you went from real estate, a career in real estate, to a tech startup, especially a biotech startup.
So it was purely by accident in the initial stages. I did co-found a domestic company in Australia. I took that company to global position, but the vision between the two founders or shareholders was just not a match. It was a misalignment. So that, in a lot of ways, although disappointing, presented the opportunity for NuroKor to be everything that I envisaged that bioelectrical medicine could be, and developing not just the technology, but developing the industry as a whole. Because there's no clear leader. There's nobody leading at the front here by way of development or by way of education and awareness, particularly in the medical industry itself. And there's nobody continuing to develop the technology aside from some of the big players such as GSK. Have backed a company called Galvani, which is funded through Google Life Sciences or Verily Life Sciences. They're in the billions of US dollars. We're not at that scale, but they're also looking for implantable technology, where we are focusing on non-implantables. So from that point on, real estate was a wonderful grounding. I got to, it was really a good place for me for 15 odd years. I can't say a bad word about it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. But it was just time to move on. I'd sort of achieved everything I wanted to achieve there. And the fact that this technology was able to help me, other family members, and have such impact on my life, I wanted to be able to. It just became clear to me almost overnight that this is really what I really want to take part in making change with this method.
And do you have any advice based on your own experience for anybody listening that's in a career but has a desire to start to get a tech startup up and going with no prior technical experience?
So I didn't have technical experience in the area, but like anything, I suppose, if you're dedicated to it, you learn it. I mean, over the period of years that I've been involved in this space, it's been a very, very sharp learning curve. But I think if you are dedicated, if you believe in it, I mean, if I didn't believe in it and my heart wasn't in it, there's certainly the challenges that arise from day to day. I'm not sure you continue with it. But without using too many cliches, I think when you do something that you love or that you believe in or that you're passionate about, that all of those obstacles sort of fade away as to the real reason. That's the why that you do it. I mean, for me, it's the impact in lives. I mean, it's almost a little bit egotistical in a way, because you get such reward personally for seeing the outcomes and changing of lives and the positive impact it has with people, that it almost becomes like a drug. we're the opposite of, but it's just this feel good that you are doing good. And I think it doesn't necessarily have to be about changing lives. It can just be about having impact, having positive impact.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's what drives you, then I think that's what drives you past the challenges.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I definitely, one of the reasons that I set up my own business was because I felt that I could create a much bigger impact, both locally and globally, by setting up my own business and by being an employee or working my way up that way. And yeah, for me, it is all about that impact. Not doing quite the amazing stuff that you're doing, but in a slightly
everybody does their
way.
own amazing stuff, in their own areas. I mean, yeah.
But yeah, I think it is. Yeah, it's all about that impact. And as you said, hit the nail on the head. It's all about your why, and that as well is what your customers and you people in your network will resonate with as well. They'll want to support you if your why is aligned with their why or their values.
Yes, true.
Yeah, absolutely. So have you from starting this business, have you got any kind of lessons learned that you'd like to share with our listeners? Anything that if you could do it over again, anything that you would do differently?
I would definitely listen to my inner self, a gut feeling, particularly with regards to not so much even just network, but those who you are associating with. Particularly businesses like a marriage. So from early days experience, that's one area. Two, you can be as organized. You need to not compare yourself to what others are. Same as in your personal life, comparing yourself to what others are posting on social media and marketing and so on. I mean, for the most part, it's all marketing. So just to worry about your own improvements rather than comparing your business or your achievements to others. But just look at what you're achieving and what you're able to do. And then before you know it, when you look behind you, think, wow, look where I've come. I mean, every day I think about, what we want, where we want to be. Then I have to sort of have a reality check and think about where we've come in 11 months from, a zero start, more or less, to a team of 6 in the UK and another 4 internationally, distribution in 5 countries. We've got 3 products that we've developed already, with another 6 in the pipeline for the next 12 months. It's, again, using that word incredible. If I think about it in that respect, it is incredible. But at the same time, when you start looking around and think, oh, I've got to go faster, I've got to do more, I've got to be more, you need to sort of look inwards and focus on where you are rather than where you are by comparison.
Oh, absolutely. I always talk to people about you've got to run your own race, because there's always going to be people doing things in a slightly different way, getting there faster from one thing. And you can get really distracted, and it can really affect your mental health if you care too much about what other people are doing.
Yeah. I mean, you need to have situational awareness. You need to, be aware of your marketplace and competitors and so on, but they're not the focus. The focus should be on what you're achieving.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's about the biggest advice I have anyway.
I wrote an article because it was the boat race in London last weekend. And being because I used to coach a rowing crew, and I've rowed that course myself. It got me thinking about the similarities between rowing something like the boat race and in business. I wrote an article about that because you can tell when you watch the boat race, some years there are people in the crew that are so focused on what the other boat is doing, or what the other people are doing, which is completely counterproductive, and you can end up losing races, you can end up losing businesses and and clients as well if you care too much about what other people are doing.
Correct, absolutely,
for sure. So what in terms, you're in your first 11 months, what's in store for the future? Kind of where do you want to take this?
We're at the moment we are capital raising, because we've gotten to a point now where we've been able to achieve what we have under our own steam. But for us to accelerate what we're doing, then at least to accelerate to the point where we can activate all of our other projects. So projects that we're looking at the moment are women's health. So in particular, there's a lot of, when I say opportunity, I mean there's a lot of opportunities to do good, as well as the neurological side of things. So bioelectrical therapy has proven science in the area of neurological response, such as assisting things like post-stress disorder, depression, anxiety. So that's another area of focus for us, as well as, of course, there's the traditional markets such as sports therapy. I mean, the Russians have been using bioelectrical stimulation in the Olympics since the 60s. There wouldn't be a professional football or performance team, I would say, on the globe hasn't used bioelectrical therapy somewhere. It's just that powerful. So commercial markets, yeah, they're huge, but certainly areas of interest for us are things like arthritis, multiple sclerosis, diabetes, neurological health, and in particular, women's health, things like period pain and endometriosis.
And if you, for anybody listening to this that wants to find out more about, biomedical science and what it is that you're working on, do you have any resources for people that you would recommend to learn a little bit more about the technology?
Yes, the sources are huge. I mean, if you Google anything like peripheral nerve stimulation or neuromuscular stimulation, you'll get something in the vicinity of 10 to 20,000 articles. New research is happening daily. There is absolutely thousands of peer-reviewed studies. I mean, we're collating and collecting them all the time ourselves. Aside from your usual traditional areas, there are a number of authorities in the area. One local UK authority who's written a few books on the subject is Dr. Tim Watson. There, microcurrent being still quite an emerging authority, there's emerging technology. There are a few books or online resources available, but that's a growing area, one that we are ourselves studying ourselves right at the moment.
But if like you were to recommend the kind of like one trusted go-to resource, could you recommend one?
Right at the moment, I would have to say no, actually. Not a single source. For the same reasons we earlier discussed about the way that the studies are done.
Yeah.
Is a lot of that information, of course you can. I mean, they're PubMed or any of the other online review sources are obviously a good place to start, or Google. But the most of the studies, in my eyes, and including our team, our scientific team, is that the studies are flawed simply by the way that they're applied, because they're applying the same mechanisms that you would say for any other type of single molecule intervention, such as a pharmaceutical or a single-use medical device. Bioelectrical medicine, it's a bit like saying, is there a study around pharmaceuticals? Yeah, but which area and for which application?
So I guess the key thing here is to be super specific when you're searching. So don't just search for biomedical science or bioelectrical therapy. Be very specific as to what sort of therapy you're looking for and what outcome.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Always search for the outcome. I'm always saying that to people. It's just like focus on the outcome, because that's what you want at the end of the day. That's the goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just like we've got a little bit of time, because you're in your first 11 months, you're a startup. It's got lots of priorities, lots of things to work on. From a marketing point of view, is there anything that you've done since starting that's been particularly successful that you could recommend or sort of share to people that are listening?
I think one of the most powerful things, and also one of the most challenging, is we've already had, can I use that word again? Incredible?
Yeah.
I'll swap it to amazing. We've had some incredibly amazing results so far with patient outcomes or customer outcomes, to the point, things like a lady who had an accident. She had a non-healing wound on her leg. that she was able to wound. So that wound had been open for nearly 12 months, and they tried everything, and it's not uncommon. But she was able to resolve that using, our consumer device in around about 2 months' time. So 3 months completely healed, and again, things like rib pain and her fibromyalgia. She was unable to sleep. I mean, she wrote me a really emotional email the other day. But getting that into, or getting your users or your customers to share their experiences is very powerful, but also very challenging. A lot of people are averse to being in the limelight, so to speak. So I think from a marketing perspective, that's been some of the most successful for us, trying to have a sort of authenticity in your marketing message and your voice. These are the things that have worked well for us that we haven't perfected, to be completely honest. We could be doing a better job than we already are, but it is still quite early days. It's getting past the fear of the communication, I think, is probably one of the biggest challenges for us.
That's interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? So tell me a bit more about the fear, because you're not alone at all in thinking that. So what?
I think a lot of, the old imposter syndrome always pops in, I think, from many entrepreneurs. They've gone into an area because they feel that they either have a strength or a passion for it. And I think what you have to keep in mind is, again, it comes back to the comparing thing. All around you see these massive companies, these massive successes, individuals who seem to be killing it. And sometimes you feel that your message or your voice is either insignificant or inadequate. But the thing is that your story, as in your own and my own, are individual stories, and they're stories in their own right. They don't need to be comparable. So aside from also fear of public speaking, fear of video cameras and all of this sort of thing, but I think overall the biggest thing is that your message doesn't have value, but it does, because it's going to resonate with your own audience if it's truly your message.
Oh, 100%. And again, it's something that I always get on my little soapbox and preach around, is that you can't please everybody. No. There are always going to be people that don't like you. You might have the perfect solution for them, but if there's just something that's not resonating with them, or that's not resonating with you, it's never going to work. No. And you could spend all of your energy trying to please that one person or that one group of people, and then miss out on all of the people that genuinely want to work with you or genuinely sort of resonate with what it is that you're doing.
True.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for coming onto this podcast. It's been really fascinating to learn more about what it is that you're doing, and I really do wish you all of the success for the future. I definitely believe that you will, impact a lot of people's lives in a very, very positive way.
Thank you.
So if anybody wants to keep in touch with you or find out more, how would they do that?
Probably our main website, which is NuroKor.com. That website is our best contact base. Or, of course, they can get in touch directly.
Brilliant. And I will include the links in the show notes as well. So if anybody's listening remotely, if you want to catch up, you can just head over to my website, which is charliewyman.com/podcast, and all of the links will be on there. So thank you so much, Rick. I've really appreciated speaking to you today. And hope you have a wonderful day.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Charlie.
Okay. Ciao for now. Bye.